everyone, this is Gale from PaulGaleNetwork.com, and thank you for joining me today for video game news. It is October 14th, 2021, and these are the top stories of the day. Before I get started, I'll let you know it's going to be a shorter video game news segment today. There's only two main topics. That's the Animal Crossing Direct and our Famitsu sales. So first, let's hop into that Animal Crossing Direct. This is the last reminder that tomorrow morning, depending on where you live in the world, it might not be morning necessarily, but tomorrow morning on the West Coast, 7 a.m. Pacific time, will be the Animal Crossing Direct, 10 a.m. Eastern time. This is supposed to be the big one for the 30 million plus Animal Crossing fans that are looking forward to that new update. This is for you. Animal Crossing has just been a smashing success since it debuted on Nintendo Switch in March of 2020. The game's had a good amount of updates along the way, celebrating seasons, different events, and such. But this event tomorrow, which will highlight what's coming to the game in November, should be really cool and something to look forward to. I'm looking forward to it. I'll cover it tomorrow and go over what were the coolest things, Let me know if you're a fan of Animal Crossing, and are you going to be watching the Direct, and what do you hope it brings? All right, like I said, it's only a two-parter in terms of news stories to talk about today, so we're just going to hop right into part two. Famitsu sales. I'm already excited because we've got Metroid Dread at number 1. Spoiler, not really. You can see it right there. But this is presented to us from Chris, 1964, from the installbaseforum.com forums. This occupies, like I said, week 41 of 2021, according to Famitsu, which is that October 4th through October 10th timeframe. And like I mentioned, Metroid Dread at number 1 with 86,798 copies sold in its debut 2+ day weekend, which is really impressive. I'll get to why it's so impressive in just a moment. But for now, let's continue on to number 2, Far Cry 6 on PS4 with 34,219 copies. And number 3, the PlayStation 5 version of Far Cry 6 with 16,686 copies sold. At 4, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on Nintendo Switch with 12,257. Number 5 is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with 11,936. At 6th place, Ring Fit Adventure with 11,257. At 7, the Nintendo Switch version of Minecraft with 10,699. At 8, the debut of Doki Doki Literature Club Plus with 9,513 copies sold. At 9, the PlayStation 4 version of Lost Judgment with 8,589. And at 10, WarioWare Get It Together on Nintendo Switch with 7,787. Okay, I'm going to save Dread for last. A couple of things to note. Look at the jump that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe had, 23% up. Look at the jump that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate had, keeping in mind this comes after the announcement of Sora making his way into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. That 53% jump, huge. Ring Fit Adventure, a 36% jump, big. Minecraft, 11% jump, pretty sizey. The only game that had a drop was WarioWare, but even that managed to sell 7,000. It's been on the chart for a while, over 144,000 now total, not counting digital. The game is certainly past 250,000 in Japan, and that's solid. Okay, we got some good debuts. Doki Doki made it there. Far Cry 6 between PS4 and PS5 actually did pretty well, over 50,000 sold. But Metroid Dread, I'm so proud. I'm so happy that it made it to number 1 and that it did so well with 86,798 copies sold, because that makes it the largest debut for a Metroid game in Japan in series history. Metroid Fusion, back on the Game Boy Advance, debuted at 49,000. Metroid Other M on Wii, 44,000. Metroid Prime on Nintendo GameCube, 39,000. Metroid Zero Mission on Game Boy Advance, 39,000. Metroid 3 Corruption on Wii, 34,000. Metroid Prime Hunters, 32,000. Metroid Samus Returns, 28,000. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, 17,000. Like, you get the picture. Metroid in general, fantastic series, high quality games, lots of fanfare, yet not a lot of sales. And not in Japan, but just not in the world when it comes to sales. But things are changing, and I'm really happy to see that. But if you ask yourself, okay, well, Metroid doesn't seem like it's got that giant of a debut in the past across its many games in Japan, but what about its lifetime sales? Metroid Dread did so well that it beats most of these games' lifetime sales. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, it capped out lifetime at only 40,000. Samus Returns, 42,000. Prime 3 Corruption, 74. Zero Mission, 85,000. Metroid Prime, 78. Other M, 75. So the only ones that are higher than this 86,000 include the original Metroid, which was a million seller way back in the day. The series has never gotten back to selling that high in Japan. Metroid Prime Hunters with 90,000, just barely edging out this 86,000. And Metroid Fusion, which is the fourth Metroid game on the smash hit Game Boy Advance. That has 155,000. But this is a really solid start, and also this is not counting digital. With digital, this could well be 125,000. That would be if it sold 39,000 digitally, which is entirely possible. We don't have those numbers just yet, but it definitely cleared that 91,000, which is what Metroid Prime Hunters did, 90,028 basically. So it definitely is looking good as a solid third best selling overall Metroid game ever in Japan. Highest debut, already the third overall best, because I don't think it did enough digitally to pass Fusion's 155,528. And of course, it's a long shot away from Metroid, the original's 1 million, which I don't think it will hit in Japan alone. But worldwide, I do believe that it has a good chance of hitting 5 million, hopefully. The word of mouth has been great. If you look at the Metacritic score, it's high. It teeters between 89, 88, 90. It's getting a lot of continued talk on Twitter and across social media. Positive word of mouth is going to help this game last. I really hope so. It's brilliant. It's well worth it. It's definitely a contender for Game of the Year. And I think the game will continue to sell well once it gets hopefully nominated for a lot of different outlets' Game of the Year talk, because that brings more attention to it again. And depending on how many Game of the Year awards it wins, which I imagine it could possibly win some different outlets' Game of the Year awards, or fan voted ones possibly, that's going to bring that much more attention. So I'm hoping that this is a big seller, because I want the series to continue and to get regular sequels once every few years, 3 to 4 years, a 2D or a Prime game. Give that to me, Nintendo. So anyways, congratulations on the early success to Mercury, Steam, and Nintendo on Metroid Dread's success in Japan. All right, moving down, we've got hardware to talk about, which is exciting because something interesting came out. Of course, last Friday in Japan and the rest of the world was the debut of the Nintendo Switch OLED model. And if you look at the total for the week, Nintendo Switch dominated with 179,851 units sold. PlayStation 5 came in at number 2 with 15,885, Xbox Series with 3,447, PlayStation 4 at 961, 3DS at 405. If you look at the breakdown specifically, we've got the OLED model making up 138,000 of those 179, the regular Switch at 32,000, the Switch Lite at 8,000. So Really strong debut for the Nintendo Switch OLED model. I know some people online are saying, well, the original Nintendo Switch debuted at this high, and Switch Lite at this high, and Switch OLED model at this high. But you have to understand a couple of things. One, the longer in a life span of a console, each new refresh should technically sell less. That's kind of to be expected because, on the one hand, more people already have it, so there's a smaller percentage of people that exist that don't have any system from that ecosystem yet, if that makes sense. You know, more people are filled up with having the system than not, slowly but surely as a generation goes on. So aside from double dippers, you have less people that are going to be new to it that are available than there were at the beginning of that system's, debut. Also, the system does cost more money, so it's actually not a price cut along the way, but it's a price increase. But beyond that, the main reason, shortages. The chip shortage is a real thing. Nintendo has to split the existing productivity line between Nintendo Switch OLED model, regular Nintendo Switch, and Nintendo Switch Lite. The three have the same components inside for the most part, but they're made in slightly different ways and they require three different lines to mass produce them. Nintendo seemingly did not produce enough Nintendo Switch OLED models in Japan for the first weekend. I'm sure that this number would have been higher. I don't know how high would it have gone, like if they dropped 300,000, would the demand be high enough to eat up all of that supply? Not necessarily, but I think it would have sold more than 179,000. So I don't think this 180K is bad at all. I think it's fantastic. For a system to come out 4.5 years later, after it already had a second model come out, halfway in this time, which was 2 years ago, thanks to the Lite's debut, that did just fine. It's just awesome. You look at it compared to last year, the overall Switch family last year, which was only two systems in, did 108,000. This 179,000 is significantly higher, right? That's a solid 71,000 more. That's pretty impressive. I'm sure that Nintendo is pleased with it. It's a big jump over last week. Obviously, we saw the Famitsu charts on top of last year for almost every week earlier in the year, with the exception of the Animal Crossing effect for a couple of those weeks. And then it slowly started going down, losing to its last year's self, thanks to when the OLED model was announced in July. You saw some people holding off. Nintendo Switch still hanging in there with good sales, but kind of tapering off because people were anticipating the OLED model and they're like, I could wait a little bit and I'll buy the OLED model when it comes out. But now that it's out, any lost ground that, was happening because Nintendo Switch was selling a little bit less than it did last year, 2020 ended up catching up and surpassing 2021. But we made up half of that right here with just this week alone, which is really impressive. Now the difference between 2020 and 2021 isn't that much, only 69,000 or so units make up the difference, with 2020 being ahead. And, prior to this week, you were looking at significantly more, double, in fact. So I have hopes, I have expectations that Nintendo Switch OLED model combined with the others will put the system back on track and we will slowly see 2021 edge out 2020, and this will very likely be Nintendo's best selling year to date for the Nintendo Switch family of systems. It's probably going to hit 21.5 million next week unless if there's some massive shortage, which I don't expect there to be a massive shortage. So that's kind of exciting. In other news, PlayStation 5 hit 1.1 million, very good. The Xbox Series hit 102,000 lifetime. That's big because the Xbox One took 50 weeks. Think about that. Sorry, not 50 weeks. 50 months 4 years and 2 weeks, 50 months to hit 100,000. And Xbox Series S and X, excuse me, did that in about a year, less than a year, a month shy of a year even. That's pretty awesome. 48 or so weeks is what it took. And that's very impressive. So props to Microsoft on doing in 11 months what your former system did in 50. And in PS4 territory, things are just chugging along. The system might end up at 9.5 million or so. 3DS, chugging along. The system passed 24.5 million. It'll probably hit 24.59. That'll be easy. It'll probably hit 24.6 and not too much after that. But yeah, that's it today for video game news with PGN. I had a fun time looking at the hardware and software charts in particular because I was really looking forward to Dread, and I'm excited to find out what the numbers were worldwide. We know that it did very well in Europe. It had the second best debut of any Metroid game ever in Europe. Just physically, it was only shy by 1,000 of beating Metroid Prime's debut. But like I said, with digital, easily Metroid Dread was the #1 best-selling Metroid game at launch in the history of UK sales for Metroid. And in the United States, we don't have any numbers yet, but I'm confident that it debuted strong. I mean, if you just look at GameStop's charts, if you look at Amazon's charts, it's up there. eShop charts, it's up there. It's going to be exciting to find out just how well it did in its debut and how well, hopefully, it continues to do. All right. Like I said, that's it today for gaming news. I'll see you all tomorrow. Let's hope for a fun Animal Crossing event and take it easy. Hope you have a good one. Bye.